Finding the main idea of a text is tricky for students at all levels in elementary school. That doesn't mean we shouldn't introduce main idea in the primary grades. While we don't expect our students to necessarily master this concept, an introduction in whole group format is very appropriate. Today is all about strategies for identifying main idea with your primary grade students. I'm Lisa Burns, a teacher success coach, veteran elementary teacher, and mom of 5. And this is the Teach Joyfully podcast. Thanks for joining me today. Are you missing out? Team H.O.P.E Insiders get extra encouragement, tips and tricks, surprise freebies, and more. Become a H.O.P.E Insider today and get access to all kinds of freebies at www.hopeineducation.com/vault. What is the main idea? The main idea is what the text is mostly about. It's what the author wants us to know about the topic. And teaching main idea can be a little bit tricky, and it's often hard for primary students to grasp what the main idea is in a nonfiction text. So here's 5 strategies to help those littles figure out the main idea in a text. The first is the most obvious. It's the one that's used the most often. You probably have already used it yourself. It's somebody wanted, but so then. It kind of lays everything out. It's very simple, and students are usually able to plug all the right things into each of those sections. And while I use this, and I do have a graphic organizer for it, there's simply something about being able to ask some questions and do some other kinds of things to be able to be flexible to finding the main idea, because sometimes one strategy doesn't work, or it doesn't work for a particular student. It's good to have lots of tools in our toolbox. So strategy 2 would be asking questions. First, you need to figure out what is the topic. If we can figure out what the topic is for the text, that makes it so much easier to figure out what the main idea is. Students need to first understand what the topic is, and then they can dive into what is the main idea. So the topic is the general subject of the text. So for example, say I have a book that is about puppies and how they grow. So the topic is puppies. So once we start reading, we start finding out lots of information about how puppies grow. Well, then we can ask ourselves, what does the author want me to know about this topic of puppies? Well, the author wants us to know how puppies grow, how they become adult dogs, where do they start, and then how is it that they end when they actually are able to function on their own. All right, another way for students to be able to find the main idea is to identify a topic sentence. Now, this is important because as students get into longer and longer text as they get older, they're going to need to be able to figure out the topic sentence of various passages and paragraphs of longer text so that they can start to put all that together to come up with the main idea for the entire text. And so finding a topic sentence, even in a short text, is a great skill. And now we know that the topic sentence is quite often the first sentence in any passage or text, but not always. So we want to make sure that we have students who know how to start searching and figuring that out. But somewhere within that passage that we're going to read, there is a statement that is the main idea for the passage. And so students need to know how to be detectives to figure out, what does the author want me to know about this topic? And as they read, they can continue to ask themselves that. The next strategy is to use a title, headings, and subheadings. So I have a parent email packet that is quite popular. It's very effective because one of the things that I recommend is that when we write emails to parents, that we use headings for different sections in the email. It's easier to read an email that is broken up instead of just long form text. Even if it's lots of paragraphs, it's really hard to read. But if you break it up with headings and subheadings, it really helps parents to sort out different information. Plus, they can skim the email, which they're going to do anyway, and find the most important information. So typically, I try to make sure that my headings and subheadings give parents the gist of everything that they need to know. And if they want more information, then they know just where to go to find that on any given topic. So the same thing is true in many nonfiction texts. There's a title, headings, and subheadings. And when we go through a nonfiction text with those kinds of features, those text features, it's really helpful to go and read them because it gives us clues to what each section and passage is going to be about, but it also gives us clues about what the author wants us to know, learn, and remember. And the title can be a big clue about the topic and sometimes even the main idea. So if I have a book that is called How Puppies Grow, not only does it have the topic puppies in there, but it has the main idea. It's telling me right there in the title that this book is going to be about how puppies grow. This does not always happen with a title. Usually a title simply gives us clues, but boy, if it's there, it's a great thing for students to be able to look at that and figure that out, because sometimes that really does happen. And the fifth way is checking for repeated phrases, words, and sentences. So repetition equals importance. As teachers, we know this. We tend to repeat ourselves in class, not because we like repeating ourselves, we don't, but we tend to repeat ourselves in important parts of directions and various things we want students to remember. So if a teacher keeps repeating themselves, then probably that's something that students want to remember. That is important. The same is true in a text. If an author is repeating things, various phrases, various words, various sentences, those are clues to things that are important in the text. They can be key words and phrases that we want to remember. Now, obviously, we want to tell students that this needs to be content-specific information, not the words and, the, all those other words, because some students will think that that's funny. A great way to sort out all of these words and phrases is to make a list together. So as you're reading, if students are noticing things that are being repeated, they can let you know. You can add them to your list. You can also go back through the text after you've read and do this as well. And then once you have all of those pieces together, you have a lot of clues as to what is not only the topic of the text, but the main idea. And if that doesn't give you all the information you need, you can go back and look at title, headings, subheadings. You can go back and ask questions like, what does the author want me to know about this topic? And you can use any of the strategies in concert together to find the main idea. But now you have students who have a toolbox full of strategies that they can use together and separately and in various ways in order to be able to find the main idea. And that is empowering. As always, I really believe teaching primary students these kinds of strategies is best done in a whole group setting with a picture book or an article, something that you're reading together. It's great to start with a picture book first. You can move to articles as well, but this is something that you need to work on together and practice together quite a bit before students will be able to practice this on their own. Once they have this down, they can use any of these strategies along with a graphic organizer on their own to be able to practice. And you can do this in partners and in small groups. There's lots of ways to do that. I've also, a good way to support students as they're moving away from the whole group instruction is to support them in your small group instruction with this and have them work in that small group together to try and work through finding the main idea. And sometimes the hardest part with teaching some of these strategies is finding the right materials. With many of the comprehension strategies, there's tons of fiction books that will help students be able to practice these strategies. But when we get into nonfiction, sometimes it can be a little trickier to find the right books to be able to do that with. So we have to dig a little deeper, but it is worth digging because we want text features for students to be able to use and to look at. We want students to have to use different text, articles, all kinds of things to be able to find the main idea. So finding the right materials to use with your students that are age appropriate and at their reading level is always the biggest struggle. And so really dig deep to try and find some of those. And I will try and put some of those linked in the show notes for you so that you have a starting place. I will link my graphic organizers for main idea in the show notes. Also, I will link some resources for you as far as text that you can use in the show notes as well. And you can find those at www.hopeineducation.com/podcast. You can grab my freebies in the vault as well while you're there. As always, that link is in the show notes too. So that's it for this episode of the Teach Joyfully podcast, my teacher friends. My sincere thanks to you, my listeners, for tuning in, and for all those of you who have taken the time to post a review, email me your thoughts, or DM me on Instagram with your feedback and topic requests. You can find the show notes and all the resources mentioned in the episode on my website at www.hopeineducation.com/podcast. And remember, a happy teacher is a good teacher. Until next time, teach joyfully and take care of you.